A couple of years ago, I built up an early 90s specialized Rockhopper frame with the plan to use it as a drop bar 26er, and that was fun for a little while, but I changed it up with some Nitto Bull Moose bars and discovered it was way more fun and way more comfortable that way. I took on this build solely out of the need to tinker, and while I feel like I put some pretty neat parts on this bike, there was no real plan for the Rockhopper to fill any particular role in my stable. I found this bike to be a nice one to grab for commutes and short errands, and while I hesitate to use the word beater to describe this bike, it's not going to be a touring bike. It's not going to be anything I ride long distances on. It's not particularly fast. It's going to be rained on, snowed on, locked up outside. There are changes coming for the Rockhopper, and I think a lot of those changes would be considered downgrades by most people. The glaring issue that sparked these changes were the wheels. I picked up this very used set of Bontrager Race Light wheels for cheap. Like the name suggests, they are fairly lightweight, and they are tubeless compatible rim brake 26ers, which are kind of rare. They have a ceramic coated braking surface, which requires the use of special brake pads, and that ceramic coating is worn and chipping away, resulting in a very uneven braking surface and like bare alloy in some spots. Braking feels bad and sounds bad. These rims are not long for this world. I do plan on keeping the hubs and maybe reusing them in the future, but what I plan on replacing them with are some Sun Rhino Light rims laced to Dior LX M570 hubs. They're heavier for sure, and they aren't tubeless compatible, but for the function I expect this bike to serve, I'm fine with that. For all of its benefits, tubeless does mean more maintenance, and this is just not a bike where I want to have to worry about that. I'm never going far. I always have a spare tube and a little pump. The Rockhopper has some other parts that I think are too nice for its intended use, and I am of course talking about these Paul Components touring cantilever brakes. I just happened to find a great deal on these brakes when I was building up the frame, so that's just how it worked out. But out of all my bikes, is this Rockhopper really the one most worthy of these blingin' brakes? I don't really think so. I do have plans for these brakes. They're not going to waste. They're just going to move over to another bike. I plan on replacing the fancy Paul brakes with some humble Diacomp 988 cantilever brakes. I've got a set of these on another bike, and they do a fine job if you set them up right. In a way, the new wheels helped give way to this choice of brake. The Rhino lights have a normal alloy braking track, so no need for special pads. Because the Diacomps use the smooth post style brake pads. I don't even think I could find the ceramic brake pads in this style. The Brooks C17 carved saddle is my favorite saddle out of any I've ever tried, so naturally I put one on the Rockhopper. But now I've got a sweet titanium mood cyclocross bike, but it came with a pretty narrow racing saddle that I really just don't love. So the Brooks is going to go on the Moots because the Moots deserves the best, and the Rockhopper will get a San Marco saddle that I took off a different bike that I just parted out. Saddles are so personal. The San Marco is just fine for me. It's okay. It's fine. I'm not doing long rides on this bike, so it's not a huge issue. This bike needs flat pedals. Everything about this bike says that it should have flat pedals on it. I don't know what I was thinking. The time attacks are coming off, and they're being replaced with some kind of flat pedal. I think I've got some IRDs that I'm going to put on there. The Velo Orange Rando rack stays because every bike I own must use this rack. Or at least every bike that's capable of it. It's just so easy to swap my Rando bag or basket to any bike in no time at all. Now here is where I am a little conflicted. Right now, this bike is set up as a 2x10 with microshift thumb shifters. It's got a Dior crank with 38 and 28 tooth chain rings and an 11 to 42 tooth cassette in the rear. Could I simplify it and go one by just like every other 90s ATB retro mod video? I could probably find another use for this drivetrain, but I have no immediate plans for it. The gear range is wider than I'll ever really need, but that's fine. The friction shifting is pretty maintenance free for the 2x setup. I think it's going to stay for now. We have the finished product. With the wider rims, the tires just seem a little plumper, and I'm a big fan of that. The new brakes work just fine. The saddle is okay, and I think with the addition of the flat pedals, I am much more likely just to like grab this bike and take it out for a spin around the neighborhood.